morning, folks, to January 13th vlog on the Philosophy for Philistines channel. I think this may well be my most difficult vlog yet because of how difficult the current situation is. So I ask you to bear with me as I think through this. And as I so often say, it's only possible to think when you're sharing. You have to be able to speak about the ideas that are influencing you. I was listening to a Dr. Jonathan Haidt video published on January 6th on why the political chaos isn't over yet. And in the video, Dr. Haidt explains 5 parameters of morality and the different ways that they're weighted between people who are of the left and who are of the right. And they pretty well define the nature of the current polarization. I suppose that's the best way to put it. The 5 parameters are these. Number 1 is harm and care. Number 2 is fairness and reciprocity. Number 3 is in-group and loyalty. Number 4 is authority and respect. Number 5 is purity and sanctity. And these 5 categories are weighted very, very differently between the left and the right. Now, this may well be an oversimplification, but it's useful for the current discussion. I shared with you the other day that both the scientific atheistic rationalist, the hyperrationalist, and the fundamental Christian have a very similar problem. And the problem is this. To the hyperrationalist, because the Bible can't be proven scientifically, it can't be valid. That's their issue with books of metaphorical meaning, such as the scriptures. And by the same token, the fundamentalist believes that he has to be able to prove that the scriptures are scientifically valid. Well, first of all, what is the scientific method? The scientific method is to develop a theory by observing natural phenomenon, and then instead of trying to prove your theory to be correct, you must do all you can to find reasons it isn't correct. The scientific method is roughly 500 years old. Prior to that time, no one thought scientifically. So the rational atheist believes in science to the point where he invalidates everything based on what he can conceive as being scientifically valid, forgetting, of course, that ancient people did not use the scientific method to parse the world into an understandable way. And the fundamentalist makes the same error, believing that the Bible has to be scientifically proven when it wasn't developed scientifically. Hardly anyone walks around this planet trying to disprove everything they believe to be true. It's painful. I know because I do it. As I mentioned in the last vlog, I develop theories and then I'm constantly trying to disprove them. If I cannot, then I assume there may be some validity to my theories, recognizing always that I'm an ignorant man and that I might be wrong. If, after rigorous attempts at disproving something, I cannot disprove it, then I will come to the conclusion that there may be some validity in those assumptions. In Matthew 6, verse 24, in the Sermon on the Mount, Christ talks about how you can't worship God and mammon. And it's fascinating what the actual metaphorical meaning of that is. I know most Christians look at it as being purely, you can't be a rich dude and be a Christian. That's not the meaning. God is reality. Christ is the one, the Logos, who observes reality and speaks the truth about it. That's why in the great metaphors in the Bible, God had to become man in the person of the Logos to manifest the reality of God through the spoken word to mankind, so that God, reality, could become understandable. And to make God understandable, the Logos spoke in metaphors. And then the work of the Holy Spirit, of course, was to act out the metaphors. These come from Jungian dream states. In a dream, you have ideas, but they're not fully solidified, and that's why you dream them. Dreams are an attempt to make rational that which is at the present still irrational and not quite within the realm of being able to be defined. And of course, the value contained in the scriptures are in its metaphors. So what does this metaphor mean about you can't worship God and mammon? And I believe I have some insights into this. God is reality. The result of rejecting a metaphorical life and having those metaphors defined in a way that is not scientific, because, of course, science only defines the natural world for us. It does not give us any lessons in how to live. And you'll note that every single totalitarian regime includes in its mojo a rejection of the divine. Totalitarianism insists on a rejection of that which is divine. So you see, first of all, they're trying to understand life through science when science doesn't tell you anything about how to live. Science doesn't provide you any clues as to how we are to conduct ourselves in this world. And when we reject the need for understanding the Jungian dream state and the metaphors that are ancient, contained in ancient writings, the ultimate result of being hyperrational is irrationality. And I believe that this is exactly what we're seeing in the left today. By rejecting the need for having a deeper meaning in life, mammon refers to materialism. And every single totalitarian ideology brings life down to a purely material struggle. Forgetting, of course, that real meaning in life isn't to be found in materialism. That's not how man frames the world. And because man is a personifier, because he's a social creature, he personifies good and evil in a godlike manner. This is why in ancient man, different states of being, like anger, being Mars, the god of war, or Eros, the god of love, sexual arousal, these things became personified. To the hyper-rationalist, these are ridiculous. And yet, at the same time, they've resulted in him creating the most ridiculous social manifestation of all, namely the Ubermensch that Nietzsche so often mentioned, the man who tries to supersede his own humanity. For eons, man, the social creature that he is, saw the world around him in a social way and told stories about that social order. And those stories contained metaphors that helped man define how to live in this world. And in the rejection of those metaphors, it becomes impossible to live morally. And this is exactly why Dr. Jonathan Haidt found such a great difference between how the left views the world and how the right views the world. I'd like to have a discussion about this. I had an interesting thread go on one of my statements that I made the other day. And the chap with whom I was speaking flew into a rage because I stated that free people can't do business with a totalitarian regime which isn't free. The only possible result is that it will damage the current hegemony in the world, which is at present US-led, and it will result in a totalitarian regime with all its hideous manifestation of mind control and thought police and an insistence that all agree. It will cause those things to come to the West, and that's exactly why we're seeing the shutting down of social media platforms, of an insistence on cancel culture, preventing people from sharing their thoughts and their ideas, from sharing the very metaphors that give life meaning, from questioning, which is how the West was founded, through debate and reason. At one time in universities, philosophy and science couldn't be distanced from one another. They were all part of the same process of learning. It was a part of obtaining a liberal arts education. And now they have become so separated from one another that neither have any meaning to one another at all. The two cannot speak, which is, again, the story contained in the metaphor of the Tower of Babel, trying to build a system that reaches unto heaven, and man is struck down with the inability to communicate with one another. The left hand never knows what the right hand is doing. And it's all because man has pursued mammon, the equal distribution of wealth, the gaining of wealth. Man is now looking at the world as being a purely material struggle, as opposed to the way the world actually is, and the way the world has been revealed to mankind throughout the entire history of man, that the world is a Jungian dream state. It is a great metaphor, and it requires diving into it to find meaning in it. We inherited a system from our ancestors. Here's one metaphor. Going into the belly of the whale to resurrect the father. Why is that an important metaphor? Because we inherited a system of limited constitutional governance with a rule of law from our ancestors. But they're dead. Okay? Our ancestors are dead. So the system we inherited from them is a dead system. It requires us to go into the belly of the whale and resurrect that system and give it new meaning. All progress is evolutionary, never revolutionary. And you'll note that the right believes in the process of evolution, whereas the left believes in revolution. That's what the Great Reset is all about, this idea of build back better. It's a complete rejection of all these great metaphorical meanings that give mankind a guideline as to how we are to conduct ourselves in this world. We risk everything if we don't go into the belly of the whale and resurrect the Father. We are seeing now an utter destruction of current societal order, which is deeply metaphorical. Now, I want you to share your thoughts and ideas. I'm going to put a link to Dr. Haidt's video in which he describes these 5 parameters of morality. Please debate with me. Start thinking about these things. Start reading the great books, and particularly the scriptures, because in Christianity, the great truths of the Western world are founded in it. The idea that we're sovereign, accountable, that Christ makes God knowable to man. All these great truths are contained in the scriptures. I am more fearful now than ever about what is going to happen in 2021. We're seeing an utter devolution of the very structures and foundations that made this little place here, which was once Canada West, founded by Simcoe as it was, who declared before the first Parliament sat, I will have natives of North America, natives of Africa, and natives of Europe treated identically under English common law and have none of them subject to prejudice. You see, this is how the right define morality, define equality. It's not equality of outcome. It's equality of treatment under the law. But no 2 men are the same, and no 2 women are the same. Let the cream float to the top. Let your thinking guide you on this path of delving into the metaphorical meaning of life. Thank you for listening. I look forward to the next vlog, but most of all, I look forward to you getting into a debate with me. There are no incorrect answers, and you can't offend me. This chap yesterday gave me a perfect depiction of postmodern rhetorical criticism. It was a Monty Python skit of yes it is, no it isn't. Instead of using ethics and epistemology, he was ranting and raving at me. And I love it. You take good care. I don't care if you don't have a good word to say about me. Just don't insult my chihuahua or my wife.